Hello and welcome to the Chason Laing podcast. We have amazing guests, interesting conversations. I never really know where we're going to end up, but we're going to have a great time getting there. Before we get started, please do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and click the little notification bell to get access to our shows as soon as they drop. And please share this episode on social media with your friends because your support helps us make more. And today we have an awesome special guest with us, TONJA RENE. How are you, Tanya?
I am great. How are you, Chason?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was fun. I saw your face on social media the other day, and I thought, yeah, she'd be a great one because I keep running into you at all the same kind of events that I go to. So I was like, this would be great. But we got to begin with the obvious question. So, Tanya, you spell your name Tonja. How often do people say Tanja?
Quite often.
Quite often.
The funniest one actually is that I get called Tanya. And I'm like, okay, where do you get that out of Tonja? But yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah. Well, I can understand because I actually said, my wife asked me, who are you interviewing tonight? I said, oh, it's TONJA RENE. And she's like, are you sure it's Tanya? And I was like, well, actually, I don't think I've ever asked. She might be just nice like me and just is not telling me that her name is not that. And maybe I'm just being a horrible person. She's like, well, you need to ask that before you start the show. So I was like, okay.
I would have definitely told you by now.
Yeah, well, you never see. My name is Chason, but obviously at Starbucks and stuff, I always get the what's your name? And I'm like, Chason, like Jason? No, and then they'll spell it wrong 50 different ways, and it's always that awkward moment when they're like, is this right? And then I'm always like, yes, sure, it's great.
Okay, it's right. Yeah.
So I just wanted to check that out. Now you're also local here to Texas, and you're you do a lot of things. You're a writer, you're a director, you're a producer. You've done crewing, all these things I'd like to talk about here in a minute. But I mean, you're all over the map, and your IMDb is all over the map. So you have done all kinds of stuff local here to Texas, which is amazing. But the more the more pressing thing is we just had an ice storm here. Did you survive?
Totally.
We had a solid inch of ice.
I'm a little prissy girl, and then I am a tomboy girl who was taught how to drive in the ice and snow. So I kind of get cabin fever in this weather. Stayed in the first day because it really was that like solid slab of ice, but then we had to get out and about.
Yeah, see, I'm very much like that. I see it like nature giving me a challenge where I need to go and try to conquer it. And my wife, the minute she hears that there's ice anywhere, she's like, all right, we're going to lock this house down and no one's going anywhere for 3 days. We're going to pretend like we're in the Alps somewhere and we're frozen in. And I'm like, I think I can get to the gym. And she's like, you are not going anywhere. And so, but it is funny to watch all the Texas people as soon as there's ice on the ground. It's like we all have to get out there and try to drive in it just to prove that we're able to, or I don't know what.
I was quite a little cranky person the day before it was coming in because everybody was going nuts preparing for 2 days inside. So the traffic was crazy. They blocked off all the express lanes. And then I was one of the goofballs that just happened to wait and go, oh, wow, we do need toilet paper and we need a couple of gallons of water because we're out. I'll go buy and get some. But everybody else was, totally stashing their cabinets for, a week worth of stuff. So, yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, it's like, there's ice. Oh, my goodness. It's like Y2K all over again. Everybody's got to buy everything, and we're all going to eat oatmeal for weeks. But anyway, well, so you've done writing, directing, producing. You have a crazy list on IMDb. I don't even know really where to begin. I was going to say, well, what's your story? How did you end up, doing acting even? But you've got such a crazy list. How did you get started in this industry at all? And how did you get to where you are?
Well, in my teen years and young adult years, I was acting and pursuing singing. So I did a lot of stage performances, had a lot of training, and had just started an album. And my mom got sick with cancer. She was my big support, lost her to cancer, and it really just sort of fizzled in me at that time. And my story is really a God story. In 2004, God gave me this very explicit dream. It's like he took me in to old Hollywood and was showing me a movie reel of old films being made, and then showed me like this cloud creeping in through old Hollywood, and then the movie reel sort of changed. And he said, "You see that cloud?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "That's when my church chose to pull my light out of the industry," and that's true. You know, the 50s, 60s, there was an organization prior to that really gave a lot of feedback into what went into movies and television and even radio, and they chose to say, "No, the church doesn't need to be involved in entertainment media."
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so that movie reel like changed, and the vision he was showing me then was like a lot of the new stuff and a lot of the agendas that had crept in, it's icky, nasty, the pedophilia, all these things. And he said, it's like God has this incredible sense of humor to me, or at least my relationship with him is. And he just said, "Am I not the most creative storyteller there is? Am I not the greatest storyteller?" And I'm like, "Well, yes, Lord." And he goes, "Well, why will not my people not tell stories the way I want them to?" And from there, he just said he was raising up an army, a remnant of his people to be faithful. He's putting this passion within many of us to go out and not only do stories the way he wanted them told, but to be people with a business mindset to come in and to do what he'd called us to do in this industry and be his light until he returns. And from that, there was just a whole lot of other details to it, but there's just many of us who have a business background. When I left pursuing my career, I had a very successful career in the real estate world. I had an interior design business and firm, and all of that creativity outlet went that direction for a season. And, I had a blank canvas that I would create in rooms and spaces, and God allowed me to bring that storytelling back into what he wanted me to do in the entertainment industry. And the cool thing about it was he gave me this dream when I was a few weeks away from giving birth to my daughter. And I woke up from the dream and just said, "Okay, I believe you in all of this, and I see all the agendas happening, but this is way bigger than me. I'm not doing anything with that part of my life anymore. So it's going to have to be you. I'm not going to manipulate myself back into the industry. I'll be available. I will allow you to rework my life to fit what you want me to do." And I also knew at the moment, if this is really him, we better buckle down, because the trials are going to be real to prepare us for it. And woof, they definitely were. But the cool thing about all of that is in the right timing, it was my daughter, who I was pregnant with at the time of the dream, that God used to draw us both into our purpose, because she basically has a double anointing of just incredibly gifted as an actress and knowing what her calling is in this industry. And so ultimately, we moved out to LA, because you got to really get enmeshed. If I was going to do this, I couldn't just rely off of what I had done years ago, and it was a bigger task. So we moved out to LA for nearly 6 years.
So tell me about your experience there in LA. LA can be a very hard town to live in, and I have a lot of contacts in LA and living in LA and around LA, and doing acting. It is not an easy, encouraging lifestyle. So tell me, how did you work within that for that time period?
I actually had a lot of great experiences there, I would have to say. I mean, I have worked in the secular world for many years, and I've done prison ministry and just a lot of things. So for me, I knew my calling our calling really is as disciples is to go out in the world and to look at the culture where it is. So there's definitely some of that culture shock. But number one, we got involved in some ministries that were in the industry, and some of them are even very deep and covert, pretty covert, as a matter of fact, in dealing with the pedophilia. Some of the, should I even say that the supposed Illuminati, which, I found to be very real, that they really kind of take a lot of risks with what they do. But I determined I needed to do a little bit of different things to learn how to do all of it, and then zero in on where I knew God was leading me. But we were involved in our acting classes. Christian Entertainment Guild is an amazing organization. The founders of that, I got to be very good friends with, and they produce, they're very connected. But from that was my grounding and my people, so that when we were on secular sets of all kinds, we really met some amazing, talented people. And in my mind, I was there to focus on their professional skill set and how talented and gifted they were there, not necessarily what their values were or, your liberal versus conservative. I just tried to stay away from all of that. That wasn't my purpose in that part of it there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think that I like that you had encouraging times and that you were kind of viewing it with the mindset of being light there. That's very different. I think LA can swallow you up really fast just with the whole, the dream, and I've just seen a lot of people go there and just get completely burnt down to nothing. And I think it's because they go in with very little support there and with the wrong mindset of what they're doing, Christians and non-Christians alike. And so I think that, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, knowing that my main thing was to create stories with excellence, but to train up talent, to be industry ready, I saw so much of that. So I started just from the get-go mentoring young adults there. I have a spiritual daughter who's still there. She moved there from Ohio with the dream, but we saw so many people move there and then just get swallowed up by what they were told there. And these would be people of faith. Instead of knowing who they were in Christ and that they were called there to be light, they would allow themselves to basically listen to the agenda in the industry of, you can't speak about your faith, you can't do this, you can't do that. And on the other side, I would say a lot of people of faith have a reputation there, understandably so, of having an entitlement attitude. And it seems critical to say that, but it is very true. We really shouldn't focus so much on telling everybody in the industry about our faith so much as modeling it and letting them see our excellence, how we handle ourselves in situations, for them to see something different.
Yeah.
And that includes, if everybody on set's dropping the F-bomb every other word and all this foul language and you don't, but you're not totally shunning them because they are who they are, then they're going to take note of the fact that you accept them for who they are and kind of want to open up to you differently. Versus if, people of faith sometimes can be like, oh my gosh, there's that language. I can't even be around it. I can't tolerate it. I'm going to be over here. And we have to sort of balance that. I mean, there were a few times where I was on a set with little kids and people just were not using a filter at all. And I would very kindly just say to them, look, guys, we have kids over here on the set, and can we just watch the language? But I still tried to handle myself to where I wasn't just being, the typical mom jerk.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate to that because I've been on both sides of that coin. On the one hand, I agree. I think if you get in there and you're pursuing excellence and you're being professional in how you're going about your craft, then I think that's like, the main part of being what I would call a Christian in film is like you're trying to do this thing, and you don't necessarily have to beat people over the head with it in order to achieve that goal. And at the same time, I've also been on the part where it's like, well, people want you to, if you're not talking about it, you're not a Christian. If you're not, beating people over the head, then you're not doing your job. And I feel like in the industry, I've had much better success when you just focus on, like you said, like, you can be there. You can say, hey guys, let's, there's kids right over here. Can we just cool it down a little bit? And you don't have to beat people over the set for people to notice and people to say, hey, I noticed that you're always going above and beyond, or I noticed you're always trying to do these different things. What's your reason for that? And so there's opportunities to talk about things at that point. But yeah, but I don't know. I just appreciate that. I can understand it. And I've seen it both ways where it's been both good and kind of difficult to work with. Now, having been, you said you moved out there in 2004, correct?
No, we didn't move out there then. We moved in 2014.
Oh, 2014. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So how do you feel like the change is different? Because you don't live there now. You live here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area now, correct?
We moved back to Texas pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, yeah. Good for you. You arrived when it was safe. Texas has reached the we don't care anymore stage, so.
Yeah, well, and that was another cool dream. I mean, he showed me a foretelling of this civil unrest and this darkness over our land. I didn't know what the darkness was. I just knew I was supposed to come, keep doing what I was doing and prepare for something that could happen, but keep doing what I was doing. And so I did.
Yeah. Now, so, I mean, and I'm going to go a couple of different places because I have so many questions here. And so I'm just going to kind of go on one tangent and then I'll come back for another.
It's my ADD brain really well.
Well, there's just so many. I don't know where even to begin. But to kind of start, so your IMDb is interesting because you've been a part of so many films, but you've also been a part in the crew aspects of so many films. So you have a very wide range of talent that you've gotten to utilize. So how have you worked within like the acting realm versus the crewing realm, and kind of how did you end up doing both things to the level that you've been doing them?
Well, I did an initial focus of, all right, I've got to get back on set. And so I was working more with a focus as an actor initially, and then started getting my feet wet. And when I would build relationships with people, telling them what I was supposed to do, and these would be, a lot of them would be secular people in the industry. And they'd be like, well, hey, we've got this production coming up. If you want to kind of come and be a part of it so that you can learn some things and we'll teach you, come aboard. And some of those things are not even on my IMDb. I just had the privilege of, oh my gosh, this person's done stuff for Fox and big companies. So I want to take advantage of that opportunity. And then other times it was purposeful. People that I knew and was connected with in the industry there were doing productions, and I had worked with them in other things. And so they said, hey, we would like for you to be assistant producer here, or, just different elements behind the scenes so that I could get more of that experience. I was able to just connect with people, build relationship, and get the opportunity. And that is because I knew ultimately I was supposed to do a lot of that stuff. And I needed to see how it works from the big level, not just from the small level.
Well, I really appreciate that aspect, just because I'm one of those kind of people where I want to learn everything. I want to be able to, like, I don't feel like I can, if I don't do acting myself, I feel like I'm missing something when I try to communicate with an actor. If I don't work with, directing or whatever, I feel like you're missing out. So you need to do all these different tasks, from gapping, gripping, whatever it happens to be, just so you can communicate with those around you in an effective way. At least that's how my brain works. And so anytime I see somebody who is kind of immersing in all these aspects of that, I can kind of relate to that and say, I think it's very valuable to learn all these different things as part of, because it's all part of the craft. This is a team sport, and it makes you a more valuable player when you know what everybody else is doing. You understand their roles, their jobs, what their, metric of success is, and you can do that. So as I was looking at it, I thought, I think it's rare to see somebody like you that has such good credits doing so many different things. And I don't know, I find that kind of stuff really interesting. So,
well, thank you. And, it's one thing that I had some great success in my other career, but when I came back into this, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be training up talent and asking them to do a lot of things that I have to be willing to do myself. And I have to be that person who's willing to be on the sidelines and to be the nobody, to be, just a bit of a shadow.
Yeah.
And start over from an aspect. And I also always believe that no matter where I'm at in this phase, I would love to come on board with somebody else if they need somebody, and they may say, hey, you've already been a producer, or you've been a director. Don't worry about that. If it's something I can help you do, but I can learn on your set how you do things, and it works out for my schedule, I would love to do that, because I've learned I can go on one person's set and the way they operate is different from some other team.
Yeah.
And I'm always learning. And that makes us more well-rounded.
Yeah.
When we do that.
And I think that's true no matter, I see that even in the big Hollywood movies, not that I'm like best friends with Christopher Nolan or anything, but like, I just see that I feel like each set, each crew has its own culture, their own rhythm, their own language almost. And so just seeing the shortcuts that, a different group makes, that's one of my favorite things about being on somebody else's set, is just watching to see their chemistry and how they work and what are they doing that, maybe they do something that's very unique that I can adopt to do on my own. Maybe that I'm not already doing, because I have my own rhythms and my own things. And so it's interesting to see how that plays out. And for me, I've seen it a lot with directing and camera. Some people, there's very differences between a director who has a camera guy they trust completely, and the camera's doing their own thing and the director's working with the actors. And then you have other sets where it's like the director is like king supreme and the camera guy's just there to do whatever the director says, and it's a totally different environment. And it really helps to understand and to know, like, hey, this is how this is working, and I can fit right in there and understand it, and no one's offended, and you just understand this is a different thing. It's a different team. It works differently. So I find those kind of things really rewarding when I get to be a part of that and see that. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Now, I've gotten to meet you many times at many Christian film festivals, and I got to be honest, I don't remember the first time I met you. It's been years ago, and so pardon me if I don't remember. But I've run into you many times at this point at different events, and so I know that you are a staple member of the faith and film industry, and I'm curious, having spent a lot of time in that realm myself, what do you think the faith and film industry is doing good? What are they doing bad? Where do they need to improve? And how has it changed since your time of being a part of it? What have you seen different?
Oh gosh.
I mean, it's kind of a loaded question. There's a lot of stuff there.
You and I've had a little bit of this conversation, and I know you probably don't remember it, but I do, because it's very much something that is heartfelt. It's a part of what God called me back into this for. And that's really like calling the church out. And when you say that, that's not being critical, because I'm the church too. He's calling us all to a higher standard. And so I think for me, a lot of the things that the faith-based film is doing is, number one, wanting to press in and say, God, we want to do this, and we do want to do it with excellence. But a lot of times, I think I see this as the church overall, not discipling people up to truly be ready to go out into the world and make the difference that we should make. That's not me being holier than thou. We see the fallout of that in our world right now. The church obviously has not been making the impact it should be making. We haven't been discipling people up to know the word, know who they are in Christ, so that when we do send them out, they are a light where they're planted. And I think what happens in the faith-based community a lot of times is people have a good heart to want to help other people, and that's a good thing, but they don't allow them to reach full potential before they send them out. They send them out prematurely, and then therefore what we have is a lot of talent and a lot of things happening where the excellence isn't quite there yet. It's a little before it's time. There's potential there, but things could be so much better, so that the true industry and more of our audience, it would reach a bigger audience. In other words, if we're going to make the impact we're really going to make, we have to be doing things at a stellar quality like we see happening in the secular industry, not with the agendas in them, not with, the foul language on a set and all of that kind of stuff, but that excellence in the talent and the production, the way business is done should be excellent. And I think a lot of times that's the other thing. I've seen this happen multiple times with some productions. People get started and they start working together with a group, and then it falls apart because they didn't know how they did it before they were ready, and they weren't willing to seek wise counsel. And that's sad when that happens. People get disappointed, they get a bad taste. And then it also just gives the Christian community in film and television a bad rap. I think the other thing is we have to do this as a business. Our life should be our ministry. This is our calling. That is our ministry. But it does mean that we need to make money doing it.
Right.
I need to make a living doing this. I made a very good living before. But to be, again, recognized and to do this with excellence, we should be paying people to do what they do. That does not mean, we talked about it. I did many things when I started over for my career in this. I did a lot of stuff without being paid or being paid very, very little. I still do a lot of stuff and I'm paid way, way small amount.
Yeah.
But this whole mindset of, well, you're going to get blessed to be on set is not doing us well. People can't sustain that, and they can't feed their family and thrive in it. Our creativity as adults, and creativity gets squelched and greatly impacted by stress.
Yeah.
And so when we've got all that stress and anxiety going on about where our income's going to come, it greatly thwarts it. And then it creates stress on a set. That shouldn't be the way than it is on a faith-based project.
Yeah.
We should be paying people and taking good care of them because that's what the Lord tells us to do. And from that aspect, I would say the industry level productions, even student films at colleges in LA and in a lot of other areas, they pay their talent to be on those sets. It's very low budget, but they're still paying them and they're done very well. I mean, very, very well. So we need to take that lesson and say, you know, we should go and get our own fundraising for people that believe in us or certain investors that believe in us if we want to do like a student level film or a beginner level film, and at least be willing to pay certain people things. Now, that being said, I'm not against having interns, and I'm not against, hey, a person says, hey, I'm interested in doing this. Can I come work on set for nothing? Those kind of people really should be volunteers. But overall, we've got a person who's at a professional level. They should be paid something for their work.
Yeah. Well, I like this because, you know, you're a professional person. Let me ask you your opinion on why do you think it is so difficult then for, like, I know exactly what you're talking about when you say the faith and film markets, you know, the faith films are usually very low budget. They're not paying a lot of people. And I've heard many times like, well, God called us to do this particular thing or this particular film. You'll be blessed by being here. And, you know, you might make, you know, a burrito out of your work here. So, but I'm curious, why do you think that is such a, I mean, I would say it's not really even a stereotype because it's so common that you couldn't really call it a stereotype. This is a thing that actually happens regularly on faith films. Why do you think that currently is?
Well, there's a couple of things that's going on. First of all, it has to do with a belief system in yourself. You have to believe that what you're doing warrants a professional level. And if you don't believe it yourself, you're not going to go out there and raise funds for other people to believe it. And that goes back to that belief system. I mean, I trained people up for years to be successful in their career and then, you know, called to do that in this industry. And that's not just about training them to be excellent at their craft, but about a belief system in themselves and getting rid of those mindsets that hinder that. Because if you don't, you're going to allow yourself to be used and abused. I think there's that. And then the other thing is, well, I can get this buddy and this buddy and this buddy to do it. And it's okay that we build relationships. That's a good thing. But you need to have the discernment that that person is the right person for the job. The gifts and talents that they have been given are right for that job. And that the friendship doesn't interfere with you being able to discern things going on. We're called to, if we're called to do a production and create it, there's a lot riding on you or me or whoever it is doing that. And that means when you get a lot of your buddies on there, then you start to allow things to happen that really you shouldn't, and you let it slide, and it can greatly derail a production. And I'm not for that. I tell people, look, business is business and friendship is friendship. And to protect the friendship, I'm sorry, I have a loud car.
No, you're good. You're good. I can totally hear you. Go ahead.
If the friendship is going to be interfered by with us being able to be professional and hash things out and talk about things directly, as the Lord would have us to do in Matthew 18, address something, then we don't need to be working together.
Yeah.
And so many times that gets ignored in a lot of the faith-based productions. And then friendships get ruined and people don't talk to each other. I had it happen last year, and trying to address something is very much a part of our professional world. It's going to happen in the professional world. But if you don't have the big boy and big girl pants to handle those conversations and to understand the legal ramifications that happen on a big set, you're not ready to do something bigger.
Yeah.
You can do the small stuff and practice with it, but this is big time. A lot of money goes into stake with this, and then therefore investors take that seriously.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested. I mean, because this is a very fascinating topic, so I'm going to stay with it for a minute if you don't mind. But I'm curious because on the one hand, there's the desire to make things of excellence. And I think that most of the people and the filmmakers that I've gotten to see, especially in the faith film market, have that in common where they want to do that. Where I'm, coming from it from a filmmaker's side, the thing that I've seen in just rampant form for well over a decade now is the extreme lack of financial resources or the ability to raise that kind of money. It's very rare that you end up with a project like, a Chosen or I guess I should say The Chosen, which, managed to do a crazy Kickstarter and raise a whole bunch of money for their stuff. And I was actually reading an article last night that was commenting how it was on a streaming platform and its quality dwarfed the quality that was on the rest of the platform. And when I read that, I thought, well, that's easy for them to say that because the quality on the rest of that platform, nothing's coming close. They don't have the money. Like, you can't compete because you don't have the money. It's not that they don't want to do that. It's because that there's not any money there. And so I'm like, if you wait for me to try to raise the kind of money to compete with them, it's going to be very hard because I've found it's extremely difficult to raise even small amounts of money, especially from the Christian community. And I'm curious, like, that is seeming to me to be the hardest problem is how do we move forward and make Christian films when I feel like the money is so limited? And I'm gonna throw out all of my cards here, because this is going to go out on YouTube, but like I'm in talks right now with the streaming service about making what I would say is a more faith-based series, but the money that is, being put up there is not much. So I'm already looking at it like, well, I can make it good. It can't be excellent for that money. And looking at it, I can follow through and I can definitely make this show. However, there's going to be, different corners and things you have to make because you don't have the money. And I'd love there to be money, but there's just apparently is not the money. And so, as a filmmaker, I always end up in this thing like I really want to do X, Y, Z. I want to try and pursue excellence and do great. And at the same time, I feel like the faith and film industry very rarely, like in my entire decades of being here, I've never met anybody until I met Dallas Jenkins that had the opportunity to spend any kind of money on a show, period, without having to pull ridiculous strings. And so I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on why is the industry like this? Why is it so hard? If there's a market for Christian film, why is it so hard to raise any money to make it?
I can't say that I can fully answer that. I can say that I believe in the power of Almighty God, that He is bigger than we are. And we have to press into Him for our, for what He wants us to do in each situation. Because I fully believe that what happened with Dallas and with The Chosen was an anointing by God for that show, for Him to get it out into the world. I fully believe that. Now, that doesn't mean that there has not been an incredible group from His production team here in Fort Worth. I mean, they've done an excellent job of branding them. But then that's where my next thing goes. They made a decision to partner with some people to say, we're going to be professionals at this. And we're going to put people in place that know how to do the things that we don't know how to do. And that's a part of kind of with my professional background. I worked in places where some people that mentored me and coached me said, you don't have to be good at that thing. You just have to have the vision. And you have to get your ego aside to say, I need a person to do this. And I want them to be excellent at that. I want them to be way better at that than I am. And you go find that person. A good example of it is back in the excellent days of the airline industry. I worked for American Airlines way a long time ago, when Robert Crandall was the head of it. And it was when American Airlines was at the top of its game. They became the company that founded Sabra. And that was the company that all the airlines used for their for bookings. And he did not even use a computer at all, but he had the vision to create this system that all the other airlines would buy from them and use it. And I never forgot that because I thought, this man is brilliant. He doesn't need to do that. He just has to have the vision and put the right people in place. And he's empowered people to do what they do. And really, he wasn't really, I can't say he was a Christian man, but isn't that what Jesus wants us to do? Is to empower other people to do what they're called to do and stop trying to, I think a lot of times people's egos get in the way. And I'm not saying with you or with me or whatever, but we have to be willing to say, okay, I sort of suck at that part of it, but I know it needs to be done. I'm going to go find it.
Yeah.
But also because Chason, I've seen some of your stuff, and your sense of humor and your vision is incredible. So that belief, God just wants you to keep building it, and he wants me to keep building it to say, I believe in what I'm called to do. I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting to go find the people who believe in us.
Well, I appreciate that. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I sort of just kept talking. I'm sorry, but there are Christian men and women who have made some very good money, and they're professionals, they're business people. I sort of believe some of the reason we haven't found it is those people have held their dollars to use elsewhere. And I do believe that it's a timing, that dream God gave me in 2004 and the timing being right. I think that all of this stuff that's happened in our world has opened people's eyes up more of faith, that truly they're saying, okay, I have some resources. I need to be willing, and I don't know how to make movies. I don't know how to make films, but I need to partner with those people because we've got to get some things out there for our next generation. I believe that season's coming about now where maybe we didn't have it before. And then I also believe we have to be willing to operate as professionals. And those two things combined make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, I've, and again, I realize that my experience is different than yours and different than, everybody else's. So, I mean, we're all in this with our own background. Yeah. I really do. I have a passion, and I couldn't agree more. I think I've even given lectures on trying to pursue excellence in film, and I feel like that, and especially in the faith world, is what is most needed because we've gotten a free pass on a lot of things just because the message was good. So the quality was bad, but they're like, well, the message is good, so we're going to just give it a pass and say yay. And I don't think that's a great thing. And at the same time, I've also been on the end of I don't want to say begging for money because that sounds bad, but in essence, you're begging for money. You're begging people for money, and it's been a very difficult and hard road. And I cannot tell you how many times where I'm just like, I don't even know in the Christian realm why we even do this. It'd be so much easier to just go somewhere else because it's so much easier to get money. And I mean, I feel like the Christian faith world is so hard to, get any kind of support on that end. And so it's like then it's a reflection on you because you want to be professional. And I'm like, so you were talking about like there's plenty of people I look at, I'm like, man, I need this, you do not want me in charge of this, things like that, where I'm like, we need to get people in here. And at the same time I'm like, well, I'm not going to ask them to do this for free because I wouldn't do it for free. So here we are. And now what do you do? Because there's nothing there for you to draw upon. And so it's an interesting place to land, when it comes to, I love the craft of filmmaking. I love doing it. My latest one that you were in, a small little part, but I appreciate it. But like, there was no money in that film. And I just told everybody up front, there's no money in this film. Like, it's just going to be a love thing because of COVID and we're going to do this thing. And
it was COVID.
Yeah, it was COVID. And it was just something to do because I love telling stories. And at the same time with that, I still to this day feel like, man, if that ever makes money, like I'm going to send it all to all these people. Cause I'm like, I don't like doing things for free and I don't want people to do things for free. And yet raising money is so difficult. So it's very hard. And,
I'm not going to say I'm in the same boat as you, by the way. And I've had some people they've partnered with me on some things and so forth, but there's an intent there to not take advantage. And I know that that's how you are. It weighs on you. And then you're like,
it does.
I suck because I want to do this, but I can't. It is a hard journey. And I'd say even being a female in this can be a little harder sometimes too. It really can be. And that sounds so cliche-ish, but it's like, oh my goodness, wow. But I keep trudging.
Well, I'm not expound on that for me a little bit. What do you mean by that? I'd like to know.
Well, just being a female leader in the Christian realm, a lot of times it's sort of like trying to be a Christian and like a female. It's as though certain people have this mindset that you're trying to go be a female pastor, and there's the whole side on that.
Yeah,
and you get that mindset quite a bit of just you're not heard, you're not perceived, you're not taken seriously. And then when you do address an issue openly, as you should, just business is business, and talk it out, hash it out, and then like, okay, great, we're done. Let's keep going. It's taken a little different sometimes with certain people, not everybody.
Yeah.
But it makes me as a female then have to just really navigate myself a little bit more on edge. And I don't like that. I don't like going, okay, how are they perceiving that? What are they think I'm being a little or, and at the end of the day, I've just learned these are issues. We've got to be big girls and big boys and deal with these issues. And if that's something that they can't do, or we can be open and direct about it, then I realize I can love those people, but we probably shouldn't do business together anyway. If I've got to be so worried about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I know exactly what you're talking about. So, I mean, I can't relate necessarily. I mean, I'm a man. And at the same time, it's been the exact opposite of that. Like in the international markets, if my wife sets the meeting, it's going to happen. They're going to show up. Everyone's going to be excited. If I try to set the meeting, it's not going to happen. It's weird because the women these days, because we're socially signaling value, and so it's like we have to show that, and so you're doing the exact opposite in other areas, and I find the whole thing is very sad, regardless, because I really think it's like, I mean, and on a faith side, God gives people gifts and talents, and some people are really good at things and other people are really good at those things. And it goes around. And if you can utilize that, you can build an amazing team. And I think that the same thing applies in the secular world. It's just, we get so bent out of shape looking at, does this look right? Does this look what, are we communicating? We want everyone to make sure we're all happy, and we're asking the wrong questions a lot of the time.
I truly agree. I think we get so distracted on the wrong things that we forget our purpose, which really should unify us.
Yeah.
On all fronts. Our differences should be the gift. It's almost like, you think about God and the Tower of Babel, and he confused the languages. Well, he intently wants us to communicate with each other and to find the ways to communicate with each other to make things happen.
Yeah.
And I think if we do that, then we succeed very well. If we have a desire to empower one another, we really do great things. And to that point, your film that you did during COVID was such a gift. I mean, for all of us that got to play a little part of it, it was like, oh my gosh, I get to create something. I get to do something happy.
Yeah.
That was an amazing gift that you chose to take a sucky moment and go, all right, well, we're going to do something.
Yeah. Well, and the truth is, I mean, I think fortunately we all have experienced COVID together. So everybody at this point around the world apparently has had some experience of what happened with COVID. And the news was just so dark and bleak, and I just felt like it was just beating the snot out of me every day. And they were shutting everything down. And I really just thought, man, we just need to have something out there where, like, let's laugh at what we're doing. Like, this is ridiculous. Yes. Let's just laugh at it a little bit and just, have some fun with it in a family, because we're all watching family. So that was another thing, is like, your family's all at home with you now, 24/7. We're all watching things together. I'm like, let's make something that, the little kids can watch and think is funny, and the big kids can watch and think is funny. And, so on the one hand, I think it was just a good outlet for me, because it allowed me to create something that I thought could be a positive thing. Like, let's put something positive out during this time where all you're hearing is negative stuff. And I think that was great. And it also gave a lot of actors abilities to say, hey, yeah, let's go and do something, because they're all having the itch to do something. Everyone's at home. And, we did it in a safe way, but, we came out with a fun little show there. And I felt like, I think it was a blessing to some people. And of course, then the critics get on there and they'll hate it, because they're like, Hollywood's failing us again. And I'm like, this is a no movie film out of Texas, people. Chill out. Like, come on. Speaking of that reminds me. So I saw, as you know, we're in a time right now where Joe Rogan is in the news. Yeah. And it's all over the place. And I read you did a post on Facebook about the Joe Rogan thing, and you said a really wise, what I thought was a wise thing that I agreed with. But just give me your, if you can, give me your essence of the Joe Rogan controversy and your take on that.
Well, I have to say, I've only listened to him a little bit since all of this. I had not listened to him before. But I'd have to say, I understand a lot of why they want to try to cancel him. Those people being the agenda people who don't like certain, things that disagree with them being said. But the whole thing just makes me crazy. The agenda to silence people, and it's the people who were screaming all this time about freedom and tolerance, and they're the most intolerant people possible. So the hypocrisy of it just makes me crazy. But what I love about it is actually that more people are having the courage to stand up and speak for freedom. It doesn't matter. I think when I did the post, it's basically what I had read about him. At that time, I hadn't listened to any of his stuff.
Yeah.
I had just researched him and read about him. I'm like, oh, well, he actually kind of has several types of things where he agrees with liberal people. So it literally has to do with his agendas. And that's what's amazing to me. You're only in if you go along with everything they say, and then you're out. So
yeah. Well, what I liked about your post is kind of like what I was just saying about chilling out, is that, for me, Joe Rogan has zero impact on my life. I've listened to a handful of his shows in the past. But I mean, that's it. Like, he has zero any pull on my life. Like, he doesn't, it's just a non-issue, and I'm like, anytime I hear something rising up and they're just demanding cancellation of another person, it's kind of like, guys, can we just, you don't have to listen to this. If you don't like them, turn them off, go find somebody that you do like, listen to that music. I'm not going to show up and say, I'm not going to make you say, hey, I like this kind of music. You have to listen to this kind of music and like everything I like, or else I'm going to make sure you get canceled. Like, that's insane. And I feel like at some point we got to be, as a society, a little more just like, calm it down and just learn that, like, we all are going to make, even you'd be foolish to say you're not ever going to make a mistake. And so why are we going to just be like, do we want to be in the kind of boat where you make a mistake and then the world can just blow you to pieces? I would hope not. No,
because that's even ruined the lives of comedians who totally play off of stuff like this.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, we need to have humor again. But to your point too, we have how many stations out there streaming?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Go find the stuff that you enjoy watching or following and do that. Plain and simple.
Yeah, and I can guarantee you a lot more people are listening to Joe Rogan now than was before you started talking. So it's like, who's Joe Rogan? I'm going to go listen. I thought that guy just did UFC stuff. Anyway.
I didn't even know who he was before this.
Oh man, yeah. So anyway, it's but I did like your post because it was just kind of like, guys, we can be sane, we can cool it down, and so anyway, so we got time for really like one more good question, and so I thought, based on your acting and just your experiences in this industry and going through the Christian film and secular film and all that, where have you seen your greatest lessons? Like, what have you learned that has really kind of made a home, like that was a valuable lesson, something that you've really taken to the bank, so to speak, from your experiences?
Since I've been back in the industry?
Well, just the whole thing, you have a long story now. You spent over several decades here. So, what kind of things have you learned that are like the things that you've said, like, these are things I wish I'd known back when I was younger, or when I was starting, or things that I don't, anything that just kind of sticks with you?
Well, there's been one thing that was huge. When I owned my interior design business, I had a couple of business owners who had the perception that owning a business was this, this glamorous thing instead of actual work.
Oh man.
And I had worked a long time and built a reputation and so forth, and actually even a furniture and bedding line, which was kind of cool, and brought this person in that I had known previously several years ago, and she moved away. And in bringing her in, I had noticed a few things, but I sort of ignored them because we were already in the process of an agreement, so forth. But basically, to make a long story short, she ended up having some major area issues, like mental, emotional, psychological issues, and an addiction to pain pills. That drove a lot of that, I'm sure. But from all of that, this dishonesty that pummeled my business. And I had CPS call me about things going on in their home. And I finally said, look, you were brought in to help, and this is not helping. You're going to have to get your family in order. Go take care of that. We'll address whatever we need to address with the business, and I've got it. I'll take care of stuff, but you need to take care of this. And in the midst of that, there was just stuff that was supposed to be happening where we could grow the business. And I started having to make decisions while she kind of took a time out. And she basically pummeled my business. And from all of that, I had to go to court, ended up just having to try to settle with her. And it cost me thousands and thousands of dollars of my own savings, money I worked very hard for. And it broke my heart because I brought this person in really because she thought she needed something for herself. And from all of that, I just said, God, I don't understand. You said you were going to vindicate me. And I'll never forget that the Lord said, do you trust me to vindicate you my way or your way? And then from all of that, he just showed me how I ignored that gift, that discernment. I ignored that still small voice before I let her come into my business. There were signs of some of these things. I didn't stop them. And he basically, I already knew this dream had happened, and I was still in the process of, I already knew I was coming into the industry, but he kind of just showed me that, where you're going, you've got to learn these lessons because the stuff is going to be bigger then. More people are going to get affected. More dollars will be impacted. And I've got to know that you're going to listen to wisdom and discernment. The things that you've learned in the professional world, you're not going to ignore that to appease somebody. That was my biggest lesson. It literally cost me about $75,000 to do. And then a furniture and bedding line that I had started and all of those things. So hard lesson to learn, but a very good one to learn that I can help other people with, not to go there, to make sure that you get contracts in place and agreements in place, even with people you know and care about, because you never know when something starts to go south, it goes south really fast.
Yeah. I think that those are very, very wise words. I can relate to them completely. So yeah, I'm like, even if it's your best friend, get them to sign something where everyone's on the same page here, because if you don't, you never know when you might regret that thing. So
my son recently went through a little bit of that, and I had said, you need to get an agreement, because if you don't, it's going to come back to bite you. And if that person doesn't want to get an agreement or they get upset about it, then you need to run.
Yeah.
Just need to run.
Well, I like that. Well, we can take that one to the bank. Before I let you go, let me ask you, what's upcoming for you? What things are you working on now? What's happening new in your life?
Well, Chason, you should come see our premiere of Wisdom County Ranch. That's my modern day ranch, Western genre story I wrote and created. And the short film is really intended for us to take to film festivals and using as our proof of concept for a series that we're working on. Already have a lot of interest on that.
Awesome.
Filmed here in North Texas primarily. And then I was producer and director of an amazing project out of Nashville about drug addiction and what amazing things that God's doing in a community. That is very much a faith-based project. And we're working on a new Western period piece that's going to be filming in March. It's a Western.
Yeah. So do you get to work a lot with horses, I'm assuming?
That's my background world was barrel racing and rodeoing. So I'm getting to kind of get some of that back in my world. Absolutely. Worked with a lot of ranchers and ropers and stuff like that in my past life.
Well, that's awesome. That comes in really handy for all that. And Westerns seem to be back on, especially with Yellowstone. They seem to be coming back even more and more and more. Everybody thought they were dead for a while, but they're far from dead. So
I have a passion for it, and I feel like, you know what? I'm a female embracing men, being manly men. That's a great thing. We need that in our world today. But it's called, the one we're working on is called Dominion. I think you've seen it on my social media.
Probably.
Carl Bailey is the creator of that, and we're really excited.
Well, awesome. Well, tell you what, send me those links because I definitely want to check them out. But then I'll also put them in the show notes so that people can check that stuff out. See kind of what you're working on. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm going to wrap it up here. But yes, we'll have you back and we'll talk more, I'm sure, because there's a lot more stuff we could talk about.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, this has been the Chason Laing podcast. You'll find all the relevant links from today's show in the show notes below. So please check out Tonja's links. They're going to be great. Follow her shows, see what's going on, support them because we all need to support each other. If you enjoyed the show, please hit the subscribe button and click the little notification bell to be alerted when our next episode drops. And if you have any questions for myself or Tonja, please drop a comment and we'll definitely answer that and let you know what we think. Well, then, no, that's it. See, you can tell how polished I am here. That's all for this episode, folks. Go get after it.